What's up, jerks?
Manning retired.
Which one?
Both.
I like kickers.
Put him on the board. Hausch Mazzoli. Got it. Championship.
What's up, jerks? Indeed. It's another episode of the Fantasy Nerds. Week 13. We made it. John didn't kick us off the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I am still here, Jason Jarvie. My brother, I think he's getting ready to watch the Lions. And but across from the table from me, I have the Doc, John Macaroon. How's it going, Doc?
It's a great day. I'm looking forward to the game, and it's finally nice to see maybe some Lions lighting up the fantasy stats. Theo Riddick, Matthew Stafford, Calvin Johnson. They've been having some good weeks last couple weeks.
They have been a little bit more reliable. I think that's kind of what people assumed that they'd see from Matt Stafford and Calvin Johnson and even Golden Tate at the beginning of the season. And they let you down towards that whole 1-7 stretch. I mean, this whole Martha Ford, everything is essentially turned around. Maybe it's Coots, Jim Bob Cooter and his offense. He's letting Matt Stafford go off the rails and just light it up on the scoreboard. But yeah, they're back in fantasy relevance, and it's almost like the Lions and the Packers have flip-flopped because Aaron Rodgers has been a standard of dependability for probably the last 4 or 5 years as a fantasy quarterback, and now I think he's almost like a question mark now.
And what's been good for me in terms of me learning how to evaluate players and going forward in terms of, hey, which guys to put in, is looking at defensive rankings. And what's been good is the Lions the last couple of weeks have gone against defenses ranked in the 20s. And so it looks to shape up that they're going to have some success this week versus Green Bay. But look for Green Bay also to rebound and put up some numbers. I don't think that Detroit's defense can continue their current momentum that they're on. They've been playing really good, surprisingly, and almost worth a start even on some weeks.
I think the question, though, is when are the Packers going to rebound?
Yeah.
Because I think you could say that pretty much every week, that the Packers they're going to bounce back. Eddie Lacy, Randall Cobb, they have so much talent on their offense that it just doesn't make sense why they're doing so bad. And yeah, going up against the Lions on a national televised game, you would definitely say that Aaron Rodgers is going to throw for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. But after this span of games that he's been playing, and we know that he is banged up, is he going to bounce back this week? I'm not 100% sure. I think it'll probably be closer to what he did in the previous game that they played against the Lions. I think it's going to be a shootout. I look for Rodgers to get over 300 yards. He'll get a couple touchdowns, hopefully to Richard Rodgers to help me in my league. But it's going to be an interesting game.
Yeah, Adam and I were just talking about it on our last podcast. Are we going to get the quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, that threw an amazing game versus Minnesota? Or are we going to get the Aaron Rodgers that kind of struggled when he played the Bears? So you never know, but I really do feel like desperation will help Green Bay in terms of their motivation tonight versus Detroit. And I do think that exactly right. I agree with you. Look for Aaron Rodgers to have a huge game fantasy wise.
I'm not guaranteeing a huge game, but
huge game. Put it out there.
It will be interesting, and it really is. It's almost a make or break game for Green Bay. Minnesota keeps winning, and the Bears and the Lions, if they continue on the trends that they're going on, Cutler. I think it's a valid question of which NFC North quarterback would you rather start this week? Would you rather start Stafford, Cutler, or Rodgers? I think Cutler right now has the best matchup, obviously, going up against the 49ers at home. But obviously it's Jay Cutler. And then you got Stafford and Rodgers playing each other. And I give the edge to Stafford just a little bit.
That's what I was saying. I was going to tell you that my rule of thumb is no Lions on my fantasy team. And I've gone with that for the last couple of years. In free leagues here and there, if I auto draft, then I have Calvin Johnson. He's probably the only guy I can reliably look to, week to week to do something. But this week, and based on what Matthew Stafford's been doing, I like Matthew Stafford, what he's been doing. I think that the offense now is an offense that suits him, and he respects Jim Bob Cooter. You can kind of tell based on the comments that the Lions are really taking to this offense, and that breeds good numbers. So I think Stafford, if you ask the question, which NFC quarterback, I go with Matthew Stafford.
I'm talking about not having Lions on your team. I've been very lucky in the entire season in the 105-1 Beat the Boss League. It seems like the players that I've drafted and the people that I've picked up have just worked. And I look at my quarterback situation. I initially draft Andrew Luck, and he didn't work out. I was lucky enough to go out in the waiver wire and pick up Tyrod Taylor. And Tyrod Taylor held me over until Luck got back. So then it was kind of touch and go. And then Luck goes out again, and I need a second quarterback. And who happens to be on the waiver wire? Matthew Stafford.
Really?
Yep. He was just sitting there. So I picked him up. I was going to start Tyrod Taylor. But then the past 2 weeks and this week, I'm going to be starting this week as well. I've been starting Matthew Stafford, and it's really helped me out this week, especially because I was relying on Devontae Freeman and Todd Gurley, who Freeman with his injury and Gurley has definitely not been as stellar in the past couple of weeks. So having those solid games from Matt Stafford has really helped me.
I feel like someone needs to get called out. Who dropped Matthew Stafford, That's unbelievable.
I'd have to look. I think it might have been Maz. I want to say Maz just because he's the big Stafford supporter, but I'd have to go back.
Wow. That was interesting. So did you keep track of, how Maz did after that trade where he picked up Carson Palmer? You guys didn't veto it. And then Derry came out and said, hey, now, this is a terrible trade. It looks like your guys don't really pay attention to what's going on because he came out and then everyone was saying, hey, you guys didn't veto it, so it went through.
Well, if you listen to, I said on the Sideline Show that I wasn't going to veto it because, whatever. If they really want to do that, then Maz has to live with that.
Yeah, trading, you get Carson Palmer, but you give up nothing. Who he gave up, you recall? It was like a wide receiver?
He got Carson Palmer, and he traded to Ermani, Ryan Tannehill, and Vernon Davis. Ryan Tannehill, who, by the way, Ermani drafted in the 4th round.
Mm-hmm. Did he have a big game?
Dropped.
Didn't he have a big game last week? No. Because
Tannehill did have a good game, but Ermani didn't start a quarterback.
Oh my gosh, your league is hilarious.
He's the only one who's like he's checked out.
Got it. Because I noticed because Jarvis Landry got 22 points, and I traded Jarvis Landry to Adam, and I'm like, of course, it wouldn't have really helped me in my leagues, but in that situation, I was like, of course, Jarvis Landry, who I need to do something, I traded off.
And looking at the standings in that league right now, I think he's right now currently in 6th place, so that does get him in the playoffs. And another reason why I didn't veto it is because I didn't care. Yeah. Because he still has to beat my team.
Okay.
My team has been head and shoulders far and away better than the majority of the teams. And that's, I'm not, being a big-headed person there. It's just fact. Like my team, out of sheer luck, has just been scoring like berserky.
Oh my gosh.
DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Freeman, Todd Gurley. I picked up Gary Barnidge. All those guys have just been scoring like ridiculous numbers.
I feel like you've been the beneficiary of guys who aren't really as hardcore as you are, and you've run into some what you always need in fantasy, some luck. So you're sitting in 1st place in the Beat the Boss League, and you're on the air there. So this is perfect. I like to hear that.
11-1 going into week 13.
Wow.
It was a close one though. Last week I played the boss, Dave Shore, and it came down to Monday night. I think he was up by 14. And I had Gary Barnidge going, and I was just watching that game and like, oh my gosh, just get one touchdown, and then finally, like he didn't even get a touchdown, but the way the scoring is in that league, you can really rack up points. It's a point per 10 yards and then a point per reception. So I think he ended up with like 5 receptions and 90 yards. So that gave me I think I won by 2 or 3 points.
Oh, good for you. How are you doing in the Slackjaw League?
Slackjaw League is the most interesting. Obviously, I love being 11-1.
Mm-hmm.
I've never really been in that kind of a situation, but Slackjaw always has a special place in my heart. And I started off 1-6, kind of like the Lions, and I've fought back this, up until now. I was on a winning streak, and I lost last week, unfortunately. But right now, I sit in 7th place. But it's between me, my brother, Joel, and another guy, Jay. So right now, we're all 5-7. My brother is currently in 6th place, but he's only in 6th place because he leads me by 1 point in the scoring. So right now, all 5-7 going into week 13. None of us play against each other, so there's nothing. We all are legitimately have to win. So I play Chris, who also he was on the show as well, and he is 8-4, 2-1 in his last 3 games. I have scored more points than him overall in the season, though. Joel plays the number 1 team in the league at 9-3. Although in the last 3 weeks they're 1-2. But he has a very, very solid team, and if they can really if they come to play, I think it's going to be tough to beat Pat. And Jay, he really has no business being at 5-7. He's the guy who didn't come to draft, so he had everybody else draft his team. He has scored 110 points less than myself and my brother, and he's playing a 7-5 team. They are 3-0 in their last 3 games. So it's really gonna be interesting. It's gonna come down to Monday night, and I'm just gonna be stressed out the entire time. I think we all just need to go out and win. And in that situation, if we all do win, it's gonna be between me and my brother who scores more points.
See, in my situation, I've kind of, since our last chat, gone on a downward slide. It always goes like that. Whenever
I thought you were the fantasy guru.
That's exactly what I was going to... You brought up my point. Once I start proclaiming myself to be the self-proclaimed fantasy guru, I've gone on a 3-game losing streak in the league with Adam, and in another league, I'm 1-2. So, but in that league, I had some cushion. In that league, I'm 7-5, and in the league with Adam, I am 5-7. I'm in a situation where I'm playing the team I played last week, and if I win, I have a solid chance, depending on a little bit of luck, to make the playoffs at 6-7. So again, in my situation, I'm in a must-win. But looking at the matchup, I'm not happy at all because he's going to feature, I believe, he's starting Andy Dalton, Chris Ivory, Miller, Deshaun Jackson, Antonio Brown, Thomas from Jacksonville, and Brandon LaFell. So I'm projected to lose 100-87, and I'm going to need some big performances by McFadden, Sanders, and Des Bryant, who has been okay since I picked him up, but now again, Tony Romo goes down. So again, I'm kind of hoping for some numbers, but it looks like in all likelihood, I'm going to finish the year 5-8 on a 4-game losing streak.
Des scares me.
It's bad. Yeah.
And I'm looking at my matchup right now, and I think it's pretty even. Right now, I'm starting Breeze and Carson Palmer. He has Eli and Aaron Rodgers. Running backs, I'm starting D'Angelo and Theo Riddick. He's got D-Mac and Thomas Rawls. Wide receiver, I got Julio and Mike Evans. He's got Dez and Jordan Matthews. Tight end, he has Julius Thomas. I have Richard Rodgers. Flex, I got Brandon Cooks. He's got Forte. And then defenses and kickers. And it's projected. He's projected to beat me by 1 point. So it's really going to be an interesting Sunday. I'll probably be the most invested in football that I've been in the past couple of weeks. Sunday with no Lions. I know you probably did, but did you watch football?
I only watched the Sunday night game. I kind of spent, there's certain scenarios when now, since my wife is into fantasy football, she's kind of aware of the Lions schedule because she knows once the Lions are on, I kind of zone out where I'll be like, yeah, whatever. And I'm not really paying attention because I'm tweeting, I'm following the game, I'm into the game, I want the Lions to win really bad. But, and I was talking with Anna about it, it was great. I liked the Lions playing on Thanksgiving. It was great. You got to get it all out. It was exciting. And then I kind of spent the time with the family. And then I sat through and watched a great Denver, New England game. I find myself these days not being able to watch all day long. It's just because I get burnt out. I'm so into the Lions and so into what I'm doing that I like to watch the 1 o'clock game, take a little break, eat, come back. And if it's a great Sunday night game, then I go hardcore on Sunday night and I don't watch Monday Night Football.
Yeah, with the game on Thursday last week, I came home after the show and there wasn't really a game that I was excited to watch about, so I just took a nap for about 4 or 5 hours, and it was great.
Yeah, see? And I was telling Adam, I'm like, you know what? The Lions should just be relegated to Thursday. It's perfect. You can get them out of the way early, sit back, and then take a couple days to rest and recover, and then watch all the games that show up on Sunday, real football.
They're essentially MAC football now because they're on Thursdays.
Adam said JV or the warm-up act.
Oh, man. So week 13, it's the majority of the leagues, it's your last week, unless some leagues do start week 13. But I think the biggest thing this week for all those teams that are still in it is you just got to take care of business and win your game. And 2, you're trying to maximize your points. For other teams that already have spots wrapped up, you may want to look at trying to wrap up, the handcuffs for your superstars, like Todd Gurley. You might want to think about if you have somebody to drop, picking up Trey Mason just in case Todd Gurley tweaks a hamstring, goes out. For Devontae Freeman, obviously Tevin Coleman is probably already picked up. But let's look at a couple of the key injuries, because as this whole season has gone, it's just been full of injuries. I mean, have you seen a season where this many people just go down consistently, starting people who actually mean something?
It's been unbelievable. It really is going to be a trend now going forward in fantasy football is really to look out for who is really who's number 2 and 3 on the depth chart. It's relatively kind of easy to know, okay, who's going to be drafted in the first round. I've kind of got that. The second round on, you really got to do your homework if you want to be successful in fantasy. You got to know who are the backups, and especially in quarterbacks. Because remember, this year, a guy like Blake Bortles, who was kind of expected to be a lower-tier quarterback, kind of emerged, and you got, guys like Ben Roethlisberger, Peyton Manning, guys that have been fantasy staples, they've been in and out of the lineup. So it really has kind of caused a lot of tumultuous situations for fantasy owners. So those of you who are, riddled with injuries, you know it. And I haven't been too much affected by it, but because I made moves, but I definitely have not seen a season that's been like this ever. This has been crazy.
Yeah, and I think going forward, it's handcuffs they've always been around. And I think when you've had guys like Adrian Peterson and Jamal Charles who have been pretty dependable, you kind of forget about the handcuffs. So I think handcuffs, they will come back. You'll probably see people reaching a little bit more on the Sharkhandrick Wests and the Jerick McKinnons and Alfred Blues of the world. But I think you're also going to see people looking at guys who are just healthy and that they can actually play the entire season, because I think that kills a ton of teams.
Can you imagine if you're close to the playoffs and you're sitting pretty and you got Rob Gronkowski on your team and you sit there and you watch a Denver defender go slamming full speed ahead into his knee? You're like, oh, shoot. Oh, my gosh, my chances are gone. You see it. Then you get a little bit of reprieve because he walked to the X-ray table, and that's usually a good sign that you can. If you really tear up your knee, it's really tough to actually walk. So he's probably going to miss 2 weeks, but that's going to be probably a very significant injury, because he's going to probably, if everything based on the reports is true, going to miss the first playoff week.
Yeah, and to jump into injuries, with Rob Gronkowski out this week, they haven't officially ruled him out, but he's, like you said, he's going to be out for a couple weeks. Scott Chandler is a guy that I would immediately try and go pick up, and I would start him this week, because it's their receiver. I feel like all the injuries have happened to the Patriots. They lose Dion Lewis, Danny Amendola, Julian Edelman, now Rob Gronkowski. Their entire receiving core is just decimated. So I think Scott Chandler, he essentially becomes like the number 2 option there. Some people will argue that after LaFell that it would be James White or Brandon Bolden, but I just don't see that. I feel like Chandler he's been with the team a little bit more, and you can't depend on any one of those running backs. So Scott Chandler, I think he's poised to have a few really good fantasy weeks. Some other injuries going around the league. John Brown and Larry Fitzgerald, they're both limited in practice today. And both are likely to go. If neither one of them can go, I think J.J. Nelson may be the guy that kind of steps in. I know he had a decent week a couple weeks ago, but I really see John Brown and Fitzgerald playing. Also, I think the bigger issue, though, in Arizona is their running back situation. Chris Johnson has been a really great story this year. He essentially was risen from the dead, but now he's essentially out until unless the Cardinals make Super Bowl 50, he's pretty much done for the season. He's done for the fantasy season. And the backup, who was the starter at the beginning of the season, Andre Ellington, he's likely going to be out. So I think the number 1 fantasy ad of this week was David Johnson.
It's one of those situations where you feel for a guy like Chris Johnson, because he really rebounded and he had a chance to really do and help them out. Arizona was coming off of a year last year that was relatively surprising, and they've done a great job again this year. Carson Palmer has worked his way up to be a top 10 fantasy quarterback. If you went to this year, you might have slotted him 10 to 15, I believe, but what he's done this year is really remarkable, and it's a shame. Again, another guy injured, Chris Johnson. But I still like Arizona. I like what they're doing, for sure.
And if you are lucky enough to get David Johnson, I think you can immediately plug him in this week. Going up against the Rams, Bruce Arians is still gonna he's gonna go with his game plan, and David Johnson has been there the entire year. He's been involved, and he's gonna get some points. So I would definitely, if you picked him up and it's not like you're stacked at running back, I wouldn't feel bad about putting David Johnson in this week. Devontae Freeman, for all the lucky people out there who he was dealing with a concussion, and it was a horrible concussion, by the way. He had a full practice today, and it looks like he's a full go for Sunday, which that's going to make a lot of people happy. They're at Tampa Bay, and I am a little bit worried about that because Tevin Coleman, he hasn't really done anything. I think he had a 100-yard game last week. I think the week before, I think he may have got like 50, 60 yards. But I really think they're going to try and ease Freeman into this. I could be wrong, and Freeman could come back and, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, which I would be so happy for. But I think that I don't feel that like, oh, yeah, he's a lock to start. What do you think?
No, I agree with you. Whenever you deal with a concussion, all these guys, remember, they try to act like warriors. They want to get back on the field as soon as possible. And that's why it was very, very surprising that Big Ben took himself out of the game with concussion-like symptoms. You don't really hear that too often of guys saying, you know what, I'm not feeling right. And a guy like Freeman, he may this week pass all the concussion protocols. He may do everything that is supposed to happen to get on the field. But that first hit, you never know. Guys who've had concussions just are that one hit away from being out of the game. So he's a risky start, but you have to play him. And going up against Tampa Bay, if you're desperate to get into the playoffs, you can't bench Devontae Freeman.
Yeah, you can't bench Freeman. I mean, the only way that you're benching Freeman is in daily fantasy, because he might cost too much. But in the regular season long fantasy, it's week 13. You need a win. You're probably playing him unless you have you're in like an 8-team league and you're just completely stacked in your team. You're not benching Devontae Freeman. Another guy that teams have probably leaned on is Tyler Eifert, who he's had a kind of a breakout season this year, and he's dealing with a pinched nerve, and he hasn't practiced at all. So you're really going to have to watch the injury reports coming up on Sunday. See if he practices on Friday. Because if Eifert can't go, you're going to need somebody to back up, especially if you're in a position where you're fighting for that last playoff spot. You want to have an option. Like Scott Chandler, he's one guy that you want to look at. Kyle Rudolph, I've liked what he's been doing on Minnesota. Just trying to think of any other decent tight end options out there.
Ebron. You think Ebron one time on national prime time? You think on Thursday night's game? Do you think at Thursday night's game he's going to have a performance?
No,
never. Right. He has done nothing again this year, fantasy-wise.
I mean, he started off hot, but I don't see it happening. And unfortunately, people won't hear this before Ebron actually plays, so it won't really apply to them. There's really nobody. I can't tell you any. I mean, Rudolph. Maybe look at Jared Cook on the Rams, because whoever's the quarterback there is going to have to try and throw to somebody. So you're going to have to try and find somebody to replace Eifert, because he's probably been
maybe one that might be on the waiver wire. In my league with Adam, the top tight ends that are on the waiver wire are Temi from Atlanta, Heath Miller, Zach Ertz. Those are guys maybe that might be guys that you could maybe slot in there if you're facing an injury. Those aren't, in my league at least, those are some interesting names.
Yeah, and maybe also Crockett Gilmore from Baltimore. He's another guy. They're dealing with a backup quarterback there. Schaub actually, aside from his 2 interceptions, I thought he looked really good on Monday night last week.
Mm-hmm.
So I hate talking about tight ends, but unfortunately this is it's a guy who's actually getting you a ton of points. Alan Hearns, wide receiver for Jacksonville, he's still in the concussion protocol as well. Of course,
that's my fault.
And it's going to be wait and see up until Sunday. I feel this is a guy that I feel like he needs to be 100% healthy to really get the full potential out of him.
I feel like he's maxed out. I mean, I'm the idiot who had him on the bench throughout the streak where I think he had like 6 or 7 straight games with a touchdown. And I'm like, flash in the pan, flash in the pan, flash in the pan. Then I'm like, okay, you know what? I got Blake Bortles. I think maybe I'll pair him up and see what happens. The last 2 weeks, diddly poo. And I'm like, you know what? That's just what I would do. Not start him when he's productive, put him in there when I need wins, and he goes into the concussion protocol with an injury in a game I need him to perform. That's what would happen. But this week, unfortunately, I'm gonna take the risk, and I'm not gonna play him this week.
I mean, Hearns he's been solid when he's healthy, but I don't think he's been able to go a full season with just completely healthy. So I think until he's 100%, they have Allen Robinson there. TJ Yeldon is a really good running back. So I think, and it seems like Julius Thomas is finally starting to come on there as well. Another interesting situation in Kansas City. If any of you went out and picked up Spencer Ware, I did in 2 leagues. He did awesome for me. Sharkhandrick West is fully practicing now. But they're saying, though, in Kansas City that it's probably going to be a timeshare. So it brings up the question of, can I start Spencer Ware or Sharkhandrick West? I think if you only have one of those guys, maybe at a flex play, because the Chiefs are playing the Raiders, which they're not a great defense. West is going to be the guy I think who gets the yards, but I think Ware he's the big bruising back, and he's going to get the touchdown. So maybe if you're in a PPR league, I'd lean a little bit more towards Sharkhandrick West. But if you're just in a standard league where you're looking for touchdowns to give you all those points, Spencer Ware is the guy you want to go with.
Man, so how did you end up picking up Spencer Ware? What went to your decision making to get him? Because you knew that West was hurt. He's been inconsistent the last couple of games. Then he got hurt, so he was available and on your waiver wire, and you knew right away to pick him up. So what position were you in the waiver wire? Is the league that you got him in? People
the
didn't
way
get him?
that worked, it was the week where there were 3 running backs where it was to pick up. I know one was Thomas Rawls, one was Spencer Ware, and I forget who the other running back was. And I put in my waiver for all 3 of those guys. Okay. Just because I wanted to get one of them. And I got the lottery, got Spencer Ware. Thomas Rawls hasn't been, I would have been happy with any of those guys, really. It's going to kill me, though, trying to think of who that other running back was.
Okay, how has Rawls been doing? How did he do in his first couple of games now starting? I haven't really seen.
He's been pretty solid. When Lynch was out earlier in the season, I think he had a couple 100-yard games. Let me look up really quick how...
Yeah, because I've never had a situation where I let go of a top 5, arguably, running back, and I haven't missed him. Marshawn Lynch this year really has been a fantasy bust. And really, going into the season, a lot of people were like, Marshawn Lynch, beast mode, is going to have a great season, really wanting to prove the Seattle coach, Pete Carroll, wrong for the decision that he made in the Super Bowl. But this year, he's just been hampered by a hamstring injury. He hasn't been performing. The Seattle offense hasn't really helped him. So I'm shocked that I was able to just move a top 5 running back and he stunk. I'm really surprised.
Yeah, I'm not sure how long Lynch is going to be in Seattle anymore because, Rawls, when Lynch was initially out a couple games, he had 100 yards against Chicago. He actually had his worst game against Detroit, only 48 yards. And then at Cincinnati, which you would think he'd be shut down again, 169 yards and a touchdown. Then Lynch came back and his role was reduced. But in the 2 games where he's been the feature back again, San Francisco, he lit up for 200 yards and a touchdown. And then at home against Pittsburgh, 80 yards and a touchdown. And going up against Minnesota this week, he's got, it's not a bad matchup. And then going forward into the playoffs, into the fantasy playoffs, he has Baltimore, Cleveland, and St. Louis, which those are really good matchups. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, Spencer Ware is a guy he's really becoming almost like a running back too, and you kind of have to start him right now.
Look at you making the right moves at the right time, and you have him in the Beat the Boss League, correct?
I don't have Rawls. I have Spencer Ware.
Spencer Ware.
But I got Spencer, and I really only needed him for the 1 week because I had Freeman out with his concussion.
So you're saying Thomas Rawls can be really the guy that you can slot in as RB2?
In that free agency period, Rawls was the guy that you wanted to get because I think Lynch was going to be out a little bit longer. West, we weren't sure how long he was going to be out. So, Spencer Ware, I think you could definitely start him, but when West came back, which now he's back, it's going to be kind of touch and go. It might be more of a flex situation.
Got it.
You might be in a situation, though, where you have to start Spencer Ware, which it's not horrible, but it's not the most ideal. And another running back situation in Philly, which, Philadelphia is just a mess altogether. If you are looking for anything, Ryan Matthews, he's, again, another person in the concussion protocol, and he's likely not going to play. So it's going to come down to DeMarco Murray, Darren Sproles, and the interesting guy in there is Kenyon Barner. He's the old, he came from Oregon, and he's a scat back. He's essentially a younger Darren Sproles. I feel like they used him a lot more last week, so it'll be interesting. Murray is definitely going to be the feature back there. But
this week going up against the Patriots, with an injury to Matthews, I would argue that if you have any of the Philadelphia running backs, you got to do something and not start them. DeMarco Murray, week after week, we're all still waiting. Sproles is one of those guys that, you do risk putting him on the bench, because if you do, then he has that potential maybe, to break one off. He's a guy that just every time you count him out, comes back with the big fantasy game. So I would go with Sproles way over DeMarco Murray, because this year I really believe that, Dallas wore him out. And Chip Kelly refuses to run him the right way. I'm shocked.
DeMarco Murray, everybody wants to hate on him, and that whole Philadelphia situation is horrible. He hasn't really been doing that bad. I'm looking at, in the league, I have him in one league, and, just looking at the team, you're like, why am I even starting DeMarco Murray? Right now, he's the 8th best running back in the league. I feel like what he lost last year, he had the amazing rushing season. He's been more involved in the passing game. Just looking at his receiving totals outside of last week in that awful Thanksgiving Day game, he had games with 4 receptions, 27 yards, 6 receptions, 58 yards, 6 receptions, 78 yards, on top of his rushing totals. So he's been usable as at least a running back 2 or a flex. And going into this game against the Patriots, I think they're at least, I don't know. If the Patriots just blow up on them, you're probably not going to see a bunch out of Murray. But I think if maybe they kind of scale it back, maybe Belichick comes up with the, let's just run blunt James White and Brandon Bolden down their throats and try to, clock management game, maybe we do see a little bit more from DeMarco Murray. That kind of does it for the injuries. There's a lot of other people who are questionable, 50-50, who they're likely going to play. But my advice to you is to wait until Sunday and not just make a decision. Say, hey, I'm going to sit this guy. I think one of those guys you want to look at is Emmanuel Sanders. He seems like he's pretty much questionable every week. But I would wait until Sunday to really finalize your lineup.
Before we get to some questions that we got from Twitter, I threw out a tweet, and throughout the week we do get a couple here and there that are targeted towards you, fantasy expert, and you don't respond in a timely manner. I gotta take you to task for that. You gotta check your Twitter, sir. I know you go on there every 3 days. You gotta check it more often, because you're a fantasy guy. We do have one guy that tweets you every week, and I think he's from LA, so he's a good guy.
Is that Coda?
Yeah,
I try and respond to him.
Try is not the word I'm looking for. You need to respond to our guys here. But before we get to that, how do you weigh in on the big topic, the big debate all across the NFL? Brock Osweiler, should Denver roll with him? Or if Peyton Manning, however he recovers from the plantar fasciitis, if he's active, do you go with Brock Osweiler or do you go with Peyton Manning, who had too many turnovers? And in fantasy, he killed your team if you had him this year. He was a guy that a lot of people counted on, going, okay, I got Peyton Manning. He was a guy that, based on perception, was a big fantasy guy. But now Brock Osweiler's in there and everyone's talking, okay, is this the swan song for Peyton?
I don't think you can really start fantasy-wise Peyton Manning the rest of the year, because I just don't know what he's going to do. And on a team level for the Broncos, I really think you roll with Osweiler right now until Peyton Manning is 100% healthy. And unless he is 100% healthy and that he can take all the hits, I'm going with Osweiler. Peyton Manning, he's breaking down. He's an old gunslinger. I think he really does need to hang it up. And unfortunately, though, we're probably going to see him next year, and it's not going to be with the Broncos.
Yeah, exactly. He won't hang it up, and it's what a fascinating situation where you start off the year, you win 7 games in a row, despite the fact that Peyton Manning isn't playing that well. Now you got this young cat who brought you back in a cold weather game versus New England. It was fascinating. He made some key throws. He looked like a solid quarterback, and his contract year too. So he's going to be available if they decide that they want to keep Peyton Manning, which I don't think they're going to do. I think Brock Osweiler's the guy, and he may be next year a one to watch. I'll keep his name on my list for sure.
If John Elway's smart, he would let go of Peyton Manning. And just to stay on the topic just another minute, I mean, where would he go? I mean, where could he go?
You know, you look at bad teams that, you know, maybe the best fit might be Buffalo. You know, they might need a quarterback for that 1 year while Tyrod Taylor's been okay, but you know, a team like that's kind of middle of the road. The Jets, the Browns, not any great teams are going to take them, but a team that maybe is like on the cusp, but that needs the last piece though, you know, to kind of maybe get over the hump for the playoffs. I don't know who's going to take them. That's a good question.
See, my thing is that I really think that where he's playing affects, you know, being in Denver, being in Mile High, it's cold weather. It's a lot of times when he gets in the winter, it's snowy. I think that affects him. And if he went to Buffalo, it would be more of the same of what you get in Denver. So I'm trying to think of the places where they have domes. You know, Atlanta, they have a pretty solid quarterback right now. I mean, maybe if the New Orleans Saints want to move on from Breeze and go to Manning, I'm not sure if that's really an upgrade. It's more of a lateral move, if not a backwards move. And then you look at maybe the teams in the South. I mean, could he end up in Dallas? You know, they got Tony Romo, and then
he's a Hall of Famer without a team. That's what's going to be.
It all comes down to the Detroit Lions.
The Lions take him.
Could we?
I brought it up as a joke, but I don't think they bring him in. That'd be really.
I don't think they bring him in, but I think it would make it fits.
It does.
I mean, he'd be in a dome for essentially the majority for half the season. Does Minnesota? Do you know does their new stadium open next year? I mean, if their new stadium opens next year, then he'll be in a dome for at least 9 games. I know they play the NFC South, so they'll be in the warmer weather states if they play him later in the season.
Peyton Manning to the Lions. That's a great concept. I think we should let everyone know that. I might tweet that out there.
It doesn't make sense.
Actually, if you put the story together, it does make sense. If the new general manager wants to buy a year, you say, okay, we're not going to sign Stafford. You move him along. You do whatever you can. You cut him. And then you say, okay, I'm going to build a new regime. I'm going to have to draft a young quarterback, and you draft Connor Cook. And then you have Peyton Manning for 2 years. You struggle a little bit. Connor Cook learns from a legend in 3 years. He's the guy. Would that be a cockamamie story? But it would never. It doesn't fit. It's a fun story to tell.
It sounds crazy.
It's fun to tell.
It makes me smile.
It does. It's kind of funny, isn't it?
You know, maybe, yeah.
It's good. That's actually a good story. It's not. It sounds way more far-reaching than reality, but it could happen because we're going to have new pieces, new management with the Lions.
I mean, if they do go in a downward spiral these next couple of weeks, it could happen. We'll see.
We'll see what happens.
I think it's all gonna. Oh, we'll have to wait and see. That's crazy. That would be hilarious to see Peyton Manning as a Lion.
All right, let's see. Let's get to some of these questions before we wrap up this podcast. We got Sam who writes in, who should I start, Brock Osweiler or Tyrod Taylor this week?
Brock Osweiler going at the Chargers. Tyrod Taylor playing at home against the Texans. I like Osweiler in this matchup because he still has Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, Vernon Davis if he can ever catch the ball, and Ronnie Hillman and C.J. Anderson have slowly become pretty decent running back options. I like Osweiler because the Texans they've been getting better on defense. I like what they've been doing recently. I still think Taylor has a good game, but he's more dependent on what he can do on the ground as well. And I think J.J. Watt will eat him up.
Okay.
So Brock Osweiler.
A lot of the early questions were quarterbacks and then a couple tight end questions. We got Richard who says, who to start, Rivers or Carr?
Phillip Rivers, Derek Carr. I don't like Phillip Rivers' matchup. Going up against the Broncos and that defense. And Derek Carr, who's he playing? He's playing the
Came off a good performance
Chefs.
last week.
He's playing the Chiefs. It's both two guys with tough matchups. I'd probably go with Derek Carr just because of the weapons that he still has. He still has his receivers. He has Michael Crabtree and Amari Cooper, whereas, Phillip Rivers is throwing to a one-legged Antonio Gates and Dontrell Inman.
Okay. Next one is from Jeremy. He says, Ryan Tannehill at home versus Baltimore or Tyrod Taylor versus Houston?
Tannehill.
Tannehill easily?
He had an awesome game last year, and Baltimore is horrible against the pass. And look what Austin Davis did against Baltimore. Okay. So I think Tannehill could have a gigantic game this week.
Big Kahuna tweets us, Antonio Gates or Julius Thomas for this week?
I hate going against Antonio Gates because he always seems to throw it back in my face, that he's still around. I might go Julius Thomas here, though, because I think he's starting to come around.
Okay. Josh writes in, Des Bryant or Kamar Aiken, Standard League?
I hate that question. Des Bryant going up against the Redskins. Aiken going up against the Dolphins. Standard League. I'm going to say Kamar Aiken because I really don't like Des Bryant this week. I think he is a little banged up. And, Matt Castle at quarterback is horrible. I think Washington has a pretty solid defense. So I'd probably go Kamar Aiken.
We got Randy who writes in, Cam Newton or Tom Brady?
That's easy. Tom Brady.
Really?
Tom Brady's going to light up the Eagles.
Yeah.
He's thrown to Brandon LaFell and Scott Chandler. I think they're going to light up event. That's my personal opinion. Who is the other one in that?
Cam Newton. Superman, Mr. Dab Man, the man who is making touchdowns very fun with his dances. He's busting out a new dance every single week. They're at home or they're going on the road versus Saints?
They're on the road against the Saints. I'd actually put that a little bit closer to a push. Mm-hmm. The Panthers may go up on the Saints and then kind of play conservative. You could say the same for the Patriots. I think you kind of have to go with Tom Brady here, though.
Okay. Finally, we got Mike who goes, hey, guys, I do need some assistance for my flex position. He's got Theo Riddick, Andrews, Marvin Jones, or Jordan Matthews in a PPR league.
So Riddick.
Theo Riddick. I don't know who A. Andrews is.
Anthony Andrews.
Mm-hmm. Marvin Jones.
Okay.
Or Jordan Matthews.
In a PPR league?
I think Matthews is probably the best of that bunch, no?
No, I don't like Jordan Matthews. I'd probably sit Jordan Matthews and Marvin Jones, and you may actually want to retweet this guy because of Riddick playing this week or in the next couple of hours. Mm-hmm. Antonio Andrews has actually been a really good running back as of late. I'm not saying he's like a number one, but he's been a pretty good option going up against the Jaguars. I think Andrews gives you. I have to go Andrews. I really like Theo Riddick this week, especially in a PPR format. But I think you have to go Antonio Andrews. He's the number one running back. Riddick will score points, but it's going to be Andrews this week.
We appreciate everyone who followed us on Twitter and Facebook, and good response this week for short notice. So that was pretty good.
Definitely. And I do have. We're going to wrap this up, John. I do have a couple quick starts and sits. I want to get at least one start and sit.
No worries, no rush at all. No rush at all.
All right. So starts at quarterback for me. Two guys I like. I like Ryan Fitzpatrick going up against the Giants. It's an away game, but he's essentially playing at home because he's playing in the Meadowlands again. I like what he's been doing. And Eric Decker, Brandon Marshall, Chris Ivory, he's got a solid supporting cast there. And another quarterback that I like this week to possibly have a good game, Jay Cutler going up against San Francisco. Do you have a quarterback that you like?
I like Stafford. I'm going to go on a limb and say, you know what? I know that this airs on Friday, but I like Stafford, and again, I like Tom Brady, and I like is Atlanta going to? Who's Atlanta playing this week?
Atlanta is playing the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I felt that Atlanta's been struggling lately. They haven't been after that hot start. They've been losing significant games in the last couple of weeks. So I like Matt Ryan to have a strong week this week. I do believe that Atlanta is a team that is one of those interesting teams that they can go either way. They can fall off the map and lose significantly the rest of the way, or they can go on a run. And the key is going to be Matt Ryan. You got Julio Jones. You got a solid running game. There should be no reason why you lose 4 or 5. Matt Ryan's a top of the line guy, and he should show it. I had him a couple years ago in fantasy, and he was a strong contributor. I look for him to get back to that this week. And my quarterback, my stardom is Matt Ryan.
Two guys that I don't like at quarterback. They both have horrible matchups. Drew Brees going up against Carolina. Carolina is just on a tear, and they look like the best team in the NFL right now. And the other is Phillip Rivers going up against Denver. They're two pretty reasonable quarterbacks who are going up against very good defenses. I don't like either of them to have good weeks, but you're most likely going to start these guys if you do have them.
A quarterback that might struggle might be Brock Osweiler going on the road to the Chargers. It's always tough to go on the road, especially after a signature win on a Sunday night. So look for him maybe to struggle a little bit and not put up as big of numbers. And they might lean a little bit more towards C.J. Anderson, who's emerging. What do you think of him?
I do like that, and that kind of leads me into the running backs that I like this week. And one that I do like he's finally starting to come around.
Made his way back.
C.J. Anderson going up against the Chargers
at the right time.
I think it's gonna be Anderson and Hillman, and both of them could have a pretty solid week. They leaned on Anderson though late in that game last week against the Patriots. So I like him this week. Another guy I like LeGarrette Blount going up against Philly. I think they're gonna pound it with him. I could be dead wrong though. It seems like every time that I pick LeGarrette Blount as like a stardom, he gets like 3 carries. So those are, LeGarrette Blount, I think he's going to have a good game going up against that horrible Philadelphia team.
Okay. Very good podcast this week. Man, I'm excited for you. You're 11-1. So basically, you're going into the playoffs. You're going to be the number 1 seed. No one's really close to you, then I take it right.
Yeah, I had to win last week to lock up the number 1 seed.
Okay.
So yeah,
so it could be potentially, if it sticks out, you and Maz in the first round, or you get a bye?
I think I get a bye.
Okay, very good.
So it is interesting though. This week I play Ron Crichton, who he's not the standings wise. Yeah. I think he's 8-4.
Okay,
and I think there's another guy in my division who's 9-3. He is the top in the other division, so I think he actually gets a bye. And I think it could shape up to be
it's 2 Sparties going at it.
Yeah, because he's the only other person. I think he's the second behind me in points scored. I think he's just had a few more weeks where people have kind of went berserk on him.
And so where's Dennis in this league? Is he ranked last, I think?
He's not last because Ryan Romani's last.
Okay.
I think it goes Ryan has 1 win, and then it's Dave Shore, and then it's Dennis Farrell.
Oh, your boss is lower ranked in the Beat the Boss League?
He is.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I'll give you let's see.
That's funny, Jason.
Ryan Romani is 1-11. Dave Shore is 3-9. And then Dennis is 4-8. He's 4-8 with Matt Derry.
Oh, he's gonna get a nice tweet from me then. That's good. 4-8 in the Beat the Boss League. That's
yeah.
Dennis.
And in our the fan league that we did for the Sideline Show, we're both out of it. It's like we're both 5-7, and there's a ton of other teams that are 5-7. So when I initially looked at it this week to see how we'd be able to actually get into that playoff, I think Dennis had the best shot, and he would have to outscore the people by like 40 points. But then looking at the rest of the schedule, there was a team that played each other that would automatically get that 6th spot.
Nice.
So
well. The fantasy nerds, the staff here wish you luck in the Slackjaw League, continued success. I know that you're busy doing great things on air at Detroit Sports 105.1 FM. The Fantasy Sideline Show is going to be airing next Thursday, the next 2 Thursdays, like 8 to 10-ish?
Yep.
8 to 10, you're doing great things, man.
8 to 10 or 7 to 9, I'm not sure which one.
It's a great listen, man. I listen every single week, every single show. Sometimes I text, call in. You'll hear the doc sometimes weigh in and try to get your guys' expertise to rub off on me. But I really like the trade analyzers. I know you guys kind of poo-pooed it and made me feel silly, but I like it. I kind of put in
you're kind of crazy with that one,
dude. I like that because I'm a guy. I know it sounds lazy. But I don't have the time to sit there and analyze defenses and stuff and trades. But this is perfect. I knew that there was this out there, so I'm like, let me do that in there. And they're expansive. They tell you who got the best end of the trade, and there's a great one that tells you who they're going to play the next 3 weeks, and it highlights like dark green and dark red, great matchups, terrible matchups. So hey, man, you got to do what you got to do with what you have. You guys are smarter than me, and in life, you have to recognize your weaknesses. So I got an extra tool. I got the fantasy experts on my side. I got the trade analyzers. I'm winning my other league.
If you want to let your computer run your team, just know that there's going to be an asterisk next to your championship.
Oh, come on, really?
Oh yeah.
You think it's faux pas to use a trade analyzer too?
I don't like Trade Analyzer is one thing. I guess the people who really sign up for those, the subscription for the full year, and then they use it for the entire. It helps you draft your team.
Oh.
That's when it gets a little murky. But I think that's a conversation for another show.
Very good, sir.
But that'll wrap it up for this week's edition of the Fantasy Nerds. Not sure what's going to be happening the next couple of weeks, but I will definitely be back
for the season finale.
The season finale, what most people's Week 16 championship week. But until then, everybody have a safe and happy, holiday season, and I'll see you later.
What's up, jerks?
Manning retired.
Sure.
Both.
I like kickers.
Put him on the board. House Mazzoli. Got it. Championship.